Luton Town have stunned the footballing world. In May 2023, they beat Coventry City in a brilliant EFL Championship playoff final, and they managed to secure themselves promotion to the top flight of English football, the Premier League. In today's video, thanks to the wizardry from the community creators at Sort It Outside, I'm going to let Football Manager predict how Luton Town will fare in their first season back in the top flight since the 1991-92 season. Let's kick things off by having a little look at the club info page, and we can see that Luton Town are now a member of the Premier League. They have got themselves promoted, the first time since 91-92 that they are going to be playing in the English top flight. So in today's video, I am literally going to do nothing. I am just going to sit in the background and I'm going to sim a single season to see how Luton Town will get on back in the Premier League. We're going to see what transfers they make, see what happens with the managerial position. We're going to then see how they finish in the league. I'm going to break it down into a few sections. So we're going to have a little look at this club info page. We're then going to move on to the end of pre-season. We're going to see if they've made any signings before the Premier League kicks off. We will then jump forwards to the middle of the season and fill in any of the gaps that have gone through there. Look at the January transfer window, and then we will look at the final standings to see if they can keep themselves in the Premier League. So, kicking off with the club info page, we can see that they are now in the Premier League. All of the things that you would expect to see at the club are here. They are playing at Kenilworth Road. They have Rob Edwards as manager. Their captain is Sonny Bradley. Alan Campbell is their key player. And their hot prospect is Zach Nelson. So the interesting thing to see is, will the game know that being in the Premier League, they need to pump a big amount of investment in the first team to hopefully not go down with that record that Derby currently hold for least points, and how they are going to go about it. Will they invest in players quickly? Will they promote from within? It's all a challenge that lays in Rob Edwards' hand, not only in real life once we get to the season, but in Football Manager 23, we're going to see exactly how they get on. So let's jump to the end of pre-season and see how Luton Town are getting on. Have they made any signings? Who they bring in, and how they are going to approach the Premier League season. We are back, it's the 6th of August, and that means that Luton Town are on the eve of their first English top flight campaign since the early 90s. It also means that pre-season is now complete, and what we're going to do is have a little look at how they have got on in their pre-season schedule. Also going to see if they have brought any new faces in to strengthen the squad, but the first thing to do is have a little look around the club info page and see if anything has changed. In the bottom left hand corner we can see that Rob Edwards is still manager, so that is a good thing that he got through his first pre-season. The board haven't wanted to replace him already. We can see that club captain is still Sonny Bradley. Alan Campbell is still their key player, but we have a new hot prospect in Sam Burns. Looking in the bottom right hand corner, they're going to set up in Rob Edwards' favoured 5-2-1-2. Now on paper it looks more like a 3-4-1-2, but it means that they're going to be aggressive in the Premier League. They are going to try and take the games to the teams that they come up against, and they're going to show no fear against anybody in the Premier League. So let's have a look at the schedule, see how they have got on in their pre-season friendlies. So they kicked off by playing against Bayern FC of South Africa. They won that 3-0. They played Hanover Park, they won that 3-0, and then they beat Boreham Wood 2-0 in a friendly. Before they lost the next two friendlies, they lost to Atletico Bilbao 2-0, and they lost to Troyes 2-1. We can see that they are going to kick off their Premier League campaign against Crystal Palace. They are on the late kick-off at 5:30. So we are all set to see how they get on in the Premier League. The next thing to check is to see if they have brought any new faces in. Now, as this is an updated database, it's still based on the 22-23 season, so we can't get rid of any of the transfers that happened in that season. But all we are looking for is anything that's happened after July, and they've only brought one new face in, and that new face is Sam Burns, their new hot prospect. We can see that the 19-year-old has joined the club on a free transfer. He's valued at $350,000 to $1 million. He has good finishing, good penalty taking, he has decent pace and acceleration, and I think he's a player who's going to develop really well into this Luton team. But it also shows that with only Sam Burns coming into the team, that Rob Edwards obviously has a good understanding with the team that got them promoted, and he's going to give them a chance to go into the Premier League campaign and be the first starters. They're going to get a fair crack of the whip. Although in fairness, we are only at the start of the Premier League campaign. So there is still a month to go in that transfer window. So that is what we're going to look at next. We're going to forward to the 1st of September when the transfer window will be shut. We're going to see, do Luton Town make any more signings to add to their Premier League squad, and how they kick off their Premier League campaign. Jumping back into the game, it's the 1st of September, and that means that the summer transfer window is now shut. It also means that the first portion of the Premier League has been completed, and we're going to check up on how Luton have done and see if they added any more players to the squad. Starting off again at the club info page, we've got Rob Edwards still in his position. The hot prospect has gone back to Zach Nelson, and they are persisting with the 5-2-1-2. So let's see how they have kicked off their Premier League campaign. If we go to the schedule and look at the senior squad, we can see that it hasn't gone too well. They kicked off their Premier League campaign with a 1-1 draw against Crystal Palace. They then lost 3-0 to Tottenham with goals from Perisic, Bentancur and Son. Manchester United were up next. They lost 2-0 in that game before they actually managed to win a game playing against Fulham in the Carabao Cup second round. They got a 2-1 victory to go through to the next round. However, the Premier League continues to be difficult. They played Liverpool next, so they got a run of games with Tottenham, Man United and Liverpool beat them 3-0. They had Reece Burke sent off, Elliott, Jota and Gakpo getting the goals to fire Liverpool to 3 points. But they did get their second point of the Premier League. They drew against also promoted Burnley 1-1. Adebayo getting the goal and Michael Mellon scoring for Burnley. So not going too great in terms of the Premier League. If we drop in and see how the table looks, we find Luton 20th in the table. Unfortunately, played 5, won none, drew 2, lost 3 with a -8 goal difference and 2 points. Now looking at the other teams around them, Burnley are there. They are also on 2 points. Brighton are down there on 2 points. Sheffield United managed to win a game and they are on 3 points. Bournemouth, Fulham, Wolves, Everton and Chelsea all on 5 points. And then we have Forest and Brentford on 6. So in terms of the first 5 games, they aren't adrift yet. They have managed to get themselves those 2 points. So it's all to play for going into the next portion of the season. If we go back and look at their transfers to see did they add any more players to the squad, they only added 1 player, and that was Adan George. He comes in on a free transfer. You can see there he used to play for Birmingham City. 20 years old, valued at £275,000 to £800,000. I think he's very much one for the future. He's in the under-21s, also available for the under-18s. So Luton obviously are confident that the squad that got them promoted are going to start to turn things around in the Premier League. And I think they think that they are going to be able to survive with what they have. So an interesting first portion of the Premier League campaign. I'm going to jump forwards next to the end of the January transfer window. We're going to look to see if they bring any new faces in January and how they're getting on at that point, and then we'll power on to the end of the season to see if they can survive their first top flight campaign since the early 90s. It's now the 1st of February and we are jumping back in as things are changing at Kenilworth Road. Looking in the bottom left hand corner of the club info screen is the first thing you're going to notice. Adrian Forbes is now the manager. Rob Edwards is no more. If we go to the history tab and look at managers, we can see that Rob Edwards was finally dismissed on the 18th of January and he was sacked. That means that Adrian Forbes has now been in charge for 14 days. He has a 100% win ratio with 1 game won from 1. If we look at Adrian Forbes, we can see that he is a coach who has worked his way up from a Luton youth coach all the way to under-23s manager, and he's currently standing in as their caretaker manager. As I said, he has a 100% win record currently. If we go back to that club info page though, we can see that nothing has changed in terms of the squad and their key player, captain and hot prospect, but in the bottom right hand corner we can now see that they are playing the system that Adrian Forbes prefers, and that is a 4-2-3-1. If we go to the Premier League and have a look at the schedule, we can see that since we left it at the end of September, things have been up and down, mainly down. They lost 3-0 to Newcastle. They did record a victory against Sheffield United in the Premier League. Corley Woodrow getting the goal. that might turn out to be one of the few Premier League wins that they have. Looking at the other games, so they lost to Aston Villa 2-0. They picked up a point against Wolves in a 1-1 draw. Lost to Fulham 3-1. Lost to Man City 2-1. They drew 0-0 with Brighton to pick up another point. Bournemouth they lost 2-0. Notts Forest they lost 2-1. Chelsea they lost 2-0. And then Brentford they lost 2-0. They were also knocked out of the Carabao Cup by Wolves. We scroll down and look at how they continued into December. So they lost 2-0 to Arsenal. They lost 3-0 to Everton. Picked up a point against West Ham in a 1-1 draw. They then lost 3-0 to Aston Villa. 2-1 to Manchester City before they beat Sheffield United. So currently the 6 points that they have from victories have both come against Sheffield United in 1-0 wins. Sheffield United obviously being one of the other teams that have been promoted. So that's how the schedule looks. The Premier League table looks like this. We find Luton in 19th place. They have played 22, won 2, which were both against Sheffield United, lost 15, drew 5, have a minus 30 goal difference, and they're sat on 11 points. So even though we are now on the 1st of February, they do still have a chance of getting out of the relegation zone, although it is now looking slim that they are going to be fighting anybody but Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. And also we find Burnley and Sheffield United in the relegation zone too. So it means that really it's going to come down, I think, to those 5 teams between who gets out of the relegation zone and if they can keep themselves in the Premier League. Let's look at some of the players, if any, they signed in the January transfer window. Go to the transfer history. So Adnan George was the last player that they had signed. And then the only player to come in on a free transfer in January was Josh Tobin. He has come in from Chelsea, as you can see. Another 19-year-old, 250,000 to 750,000. Plays as a defender, centre, defensive midfielder or a midfielder. And he's currently in their under-21s. Also available for the under-18s. So it seems like Luton have accepted their fate that maybe they're going to be building for the future and not the here and now. And they haven't spent any money in their Premier League campaign, which is probably quite shocking considering they were going to need to invest. So that's a roundup on the 1st of February. They have a total of, let's have a look, they have 16 games to save themselves in the Premier League. In those games, they are going to be playing the likes of Fulham, Wolves. They have West Ham. They also are playing against Bournemouth, who are down there, Notts Forest, who are down there, and Burnley to finish the season. Could it be that they are going to get themselves out of trouble on the final day of the season? What a miracle that would be against a team that are also promoted to the Premier League in this season. They do have a tricky path along the way. So let's jump to the end of the season. Can Luton Town save themselves in the Premier League? Will FM23 predict the great escape for Luton? Here we go then, we have pushed forwards to the end of the Premier League campaign. It's the 29th of May and Luton now know their fate in the Premier League. But we're going to start off on the club info page. Looking in the bottom left hand corner, Javi Gracia has been appointed as manager. If we go to the managers tab and have a look, Adrian Forbes was here when we were last at the club in February. He lasted 19 days before he left his caretaker position so the board could appoint Javi Gracia. He has been at the club for 112 days. Looking at the top players, hot prospect has now changed to Katie Johnson. He is a player who came in through the youth intake, valued at £350,000 to £1 million at 15 years old. He's on a youth contract, so obviously one for the future for Luton. Look in the bottom right hand corner, their last starting 11 shows Javi Gracia not budging from the 4-4-2. Says he's an adventurous manager. I'm not too sure 4-4-2 in the Premier League is as adventurous as that label says. So let's have a look at the schedule. Did things get any better? Remember, they had a victory against Sheffield United the last time that we were looking at the schedule. No, it didn't. It actually got worse. They didn't win a single game between Sheffield United on the 21st of January and the end of the league. Their woeful run of form included a 2-1 loss to Fulham, 2-1 loss to Wolves. They picked up a point with a 0-0 draw against West Ham. Tottenham, they lost 2-0. Crystal Palace, they lost 4-0. Everton, they lost 2-1. Brentford, they did manage to get a point, a 2-2 draw. Arsenal, they lost 4-0. Chelsea, they lost 2-0. Bournemouth, they lost 1-0. Notts Forest, they lost 2-0. Brighton lost 2-1. They did pick up a point against Liverpool, which is quite impressive, in a 2-2 draw, with Adebayo getting 2 goals in that game. They then played against Man United and lost 3-0. Newcastle, they lost 2-1. And that game against Burnley, where they were going up against fellow promotees, they lost 1-0. Did that have any effect on the Premier League? No, it did not. We can see that they have got relegated in 20th place. They played 38. They only won those 2 games against Sheffield United, both 1-0. They drew 8 games. They lost 28 at a minus 54 goal difference, and they finished on 14 points. We can also see Sheffield United and Burnley getting relegated with them. They finished 8 points behind Burnley, and they finished 19 points behind Bournemouth, who finished in 17th place. So that is what FM23 thinks is going to happen to Luton Town. I'm not too sure why FM23 thinks that they didn't need to spend any of the money they will have generated by getting promoted to the Premier League. They only bought in those 3 free transfers. Obviously doesn't think that they need to invest too much, but in real life I think we are going to see Luton having to go for players and be quite aggressive in the transfer market. But unfortunately, Luton's fate is sealed. They are going to be returning back to the Championship at the first time of asking, and they only scored 14 points in this simulation on FM23. Right, if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. I cannot thank you all enough for doing that and supporting the channel across all of the months that I've been doing the videos. It really, really is humbling to see people coming into the comments section saying they enjoy the videos, also to see them getting shared and to see the subscribers growing. Really cannot thank you all enough for taking the time to contribute and to interact with the channel. Don't forget, before you go, there are other things on the channel such as Let's Plays, Wonder Kids, hints, tips, tutorials. There are also tactic videos, a little bit of something for everybody on the channel. But for this one, I'm going to leave it there. Big thank you for watching. I'll see you on another video very soon.